right, good morning, friends. I'm just watching to make sure it shows up. Is it going to go live? Hopefully it does. Well, it says I'm streaming, so I guess I'll go with it. Oh, yes, it's live. Excellent. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melco's application team, and this is our Design Shop Talk, where we get together every week, except on holidays, and talk about different questions you might have. So if you have questions, be sure to either send them to applications@melco.com, or not right now. If you want them answered now, put them in the comments on this video, and I'll try to keep an eye looking over to my other screen to answer any questions that pop up. I only had 2 questions for this week that were typed in ahead of time. Good morning. So I'm going to start with those, and if you have any others, and they're really quick, so if you have any other questions, type in. So let's start off with what I had. How do I combine some steps in a design? For some reason, DS is making them all separate steps, but they're the same color. How do I make them automatically group? All right, so let's look at that. So in DesignShop, I opened up a design and messed it up with a whole bunch of different color steps. Good morning. So you can see here I have all my leaves. They're the same color, but I have them broken up silly so that they're sewn in different steps. Now there's a bunch of different ways you can combine them. If you want to do it manually, what you can do is, you see over here there's I don't know what it's supposed to be, boxes that go up into the box above. I don't know. That's the combine step. So if you click on that, it will merge it into the color above it. Okay. Now if you want to merge several at once, you can always hold your control key down and click on them, and then choose what color you want in the color palette over here. That's another way. So you can see I just merged all those into a single color now. Well, the question was, how do I make it automatically do that so I don't have to sit here and modify my design? Well, this button right here is Auto Merge Color Blocks. So when you select on the Auto Merge Color Blocks, it's instant. Good morning, everybody. So what that will do is it will automatically compress everything down. So any of the same colors, it will throw it into the one above it. It is instant. So I personally don't use it much because I do a lot of applique type stuff where I have multiple colors that I need the separate colors to be able to put my applique stops in. But if I click that, notice instantly it went ahead and merged all my colors into one. All right, so all my greens are green, white, brown. So basically it'll combine any that are stacked together. Another question we had is, how do you tie off the last element without returning to the origin? Return to origin is actually a command within the software, so you would just not do that, right? So I'm wondering if what you're really asking is, at the end of a design, it goes back to the center. It doesn't make a stitch, but it goes back to the first point. That's actually part of the machine. So when it finishes a design and finishes sewing, it goes back to the start of the design so that it can redo it. So if that's what you're looking at, that's not really return to origin. That's just resetting to run the design a second time. Okay. But if I went here and I went to my last element, well, this is not a good design for me to do this on. All right, hang on. I'll draw a box and a circle. Make it a different color. Let's make it that color. All right, so I have a box and a circle. So I want to have this one do a tie off without a return to center. All I need to do is set my properties so that I have my knots enabled. And I like this personally closer to 20. In this particular design, it's not going to matter. But so if you have your knots turned on under tie in and tie off, I call them knots. They're tie-ins and tie-offs. All right. So when you have the tie-ins and tie-offs turned on, it will automatically create that tie-off at the end of your element, and it'll end it. Awesome. So if you want it to return to origin, somewhere over here, there it is the insert return to origin. That actually returns it to the origin. So let's say you open up a design that was done by another digitizer and they put in that return to origin command. You can always come over to your OFM, select it and hit delete, and now that's gone. Okay. All right. Someone's been using Melco since EDS3. That is quite the legacy going through everything. Awesome. What questions do we have? Like I said, I had only 2 questions sent in, so really quick, and I don't want to just book it off here. So if you I'll waste a little bit of time while people can type in questions. I don't know, how's everyone doing with the quarantine? I know I've been holed up in my house making masks back there. See the rolls kind of sitting behind me? Hard to see. Let's see, will that do it? Yeah, these rolls in the back behind me. Which way? I don't know. Those are where all my fabrics are that I'm making masks out of. Any other questions or things that you want to learn about or didn't want to learn more of? Where you can find different resources, don't forget about that. Melco University, if you're new to digitizing, you can always go to the YouTube, which is a good resource for you. Another is if you're just getting started, where's my thing? All right, so if I go to melcouniversity.com, there. All right, so up here, if you click on the media tab, this will put all the videos on how to digitize from scratch. The first videos, basics through editing, really go through kind of how to work with designs you already have, and then starting with Digitizing Basics, it shows you how to create things from scratch. So a question was typed in, how do we change the mask to be for a kid size? Okay, so let's look at that. I gotta go find the mask first. Give me a second. That's not it. I guess I could go get it off of the website. Sorry, hang on. Where did I put it? There it is. Masks. Okay, so here's mask file. It's currently 7 by 3.5. So if you want to modify this to be smaller for kids, the pleat file you can leave the same because all the kids file is going to do is make it more narrow, right? So to modify this, what I would do is just select everything, and if you look at the last stitch, that's the actual size of the mask, so about 7 inches. Whatever you want the kid size to be, I've seen online people suggesting anywhere from 5.5 to 6.5 on the width for children. So what I would do is take this entire file and I would just change it. So let's say we want to make it 6 wide. So right here, I'm going to turn off the lock aspect ratio because I just want to make it narrower. And let's say I change it to 6. All right. So once I have that one, I can select all the others and just drag it. And there we go. Now I've got a 6-inch mask. I'm going to make this one a little smaller. Oops, undo. I didn't mean to get that last stitch. So how I'm selecting all the other stitches is I'm holding the shift key down and selecting to the end. And that way I can go to scale it in until it's just outside that original box I made. All right, so that so there we go. For the youth size, it's just making it narrower. Now the pleat file will be a little wider than you would actually need it, which isn't going to hurt anything. You can do the same thing with the pleat to save on fabric. It's just make it a little bit narrower. Okay. I just wanted to know if you have any cool fill stitch partition sequences. I usually use 0123 or 4440 for basket. 4440 is fun. There was one, let's see, Nate and them were, maybe they can type in the numbers. There's that smaller basket weave. I think it's 4 4s and then 4 0s. Let me try. I forget. I always just play with them until I find something that's interesting. Let's see. So the stitch partitions, if you haven't played with them, that's what's down here. So if I change this to 8 and then do, let's see what that one does. I think that's it. Kind of. That one's it. So that does like this little basket, I don't know what to call it, like a brick pattern. You can do less as well. So if I do 4400, There you go. So that gets you kind of a brick type pattern, which is fun. There was another 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, I think. Is that, yeah, that's the zigzag one, which is kind of neat as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1 will give you like a little zigzag look to it. Oh, the golf ball filling custom shapes. Yeah, that's another. All right. Trying to think if there are any other fun ones. I usually just play with numbers until something looks decent. All right, what other questions do we have? I like the zigzag. That one's neat. Okay. Any other questions? Trying to think. Oh, I was showing resources. So you've got your videos that you can watch those. The Digitizing Basics, this is where you start to learn how to bring an art file in and create all the different types of elements. There's different practice things. I recently bought V10 upgrade. Can I install it on a second laptop so I can work on designs from home? Yes, but you can install it pretty much wherever you want, but it's license dependent, right? So if you have a single license of it, what you're going to have to do in order to use it is deactivate it on one computer and activate it on the other. I know people who have an actual shop and they digitize at home. So when they go to work, they'll, activate product. They'll work before they leave for the day. They'll deactivate it when they get home. They'll activate the installation on the other computer. So it's the only downside to that is if you accidentally leave it activated on one computer and you want to go work on it at a different location, that's a little bit frustrating. But yeah, it is license dependent, so you can only have one license active at a time. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any. I don't see any typed in. I'm trying to think if there's anything else interesting to discuss. So we talked about the mask, how to make it smaller. I'm actually going to save this. I got to run some kid masks. This is going to be 6. Desktop. I'll just put it there for now. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any typed in. Well, I hope you guys are all making the most out of your quiet time, as I like to think of it. There's plenty of things we can do to try to think about, outside the box. Have I seen the new version of DesignShop? No, I haven't. What's new? I have no idea. I'd like to know. No, I don't know. And if I did know, I couldn't share anyway, but I haven't seen it yet. I'm excited. I want to see as much as you guys do. So it'll be fun once it's released. So that'll be cool. Any other questions? I don't see any. Ah, there we go. So someone did put the link on how to do the activation and deactivation. So that is on. Oh, if you haven't looked at these, I will point that out. So I know not many people use them. If you go to melco-service.com, this is where you'll find all the manuals for your machines and different things. But this little place right here, this FAQ, is a lot of fun. You can find all kinds of info out there. So someone just typed in, are there any tips for doing puff? Well, if you go to melco-service.com, and I'm just going to type in puff, so there's some really great resources out here that you can review. There's some digitizing for 3D embroidery. There's a presentation that was done a while back, and there you can find the links to it. How to, details on how to do it on hats, all these different types of things. This article on 3D embroidery actually has a file in there where you can go see how to work on capping the different things and the different ways, considerations of things you have to think about when you're doing puff. So these are all really good resources for you. With puff, I mean, the biggest thing I find is to remember to pick up your presser foot. and to make sure you have the settings on the machine right when you're actually sewing them. And then use a file that was digitized for puff. It makes a big difference. I mean, you don't want to be sewing a whole bunch of underlay, compressing the puff, so that when you go over it, you're not getting that full 3D effect and you've wasted a bunch of stitches, essentially. Another thing when you're doing puff, make sure you get a heat gun. So I don't know what to call them, short of I call them pokies. You know, when you go rip off the foam, you'll see like little pieces of the foam sticking out here and there. The very first one I did, I got me some tweezers and sat there poking them in, and someone was like, "What are you doing?" Get yourself a heat gun, and sure enough, you take a heat gun, wave it over it, and they all just kind of disappear. It tightens up and looks fabulous. All right, but check out these videos; they're really helpful. Hey, hey Juliet, hey Turtle. All right, what other questions might we want to go over today? So, oh, this question section, there's everything on there. So it's updated on a regular basis. Check it out. You know, search for what you want, rummage through it. There's links to all the videos. There's articles on both the OS and DS, all kinds of help for you. Any recommendation on where to purchase pre-made 3D font files? I know some of the private digitizers have files for sale. Melco has some on their webpage as part of a yes, Rachel, I did your question. I'll go over it again though. Anyway, Melco has a font set that they sell. It's kind of an upgrade. There's some nice puff fonts in there with some puff presets that you can apply to the different fonts, which are really nice. They work beautifully. With that purchase, you get some other fun fonts as well. So there's that one. The other digitizers, I always just randomly try them. So I've not found any good site that has, you know, a massive inventory of puff digitizing designs. So it's the biggest thing I usually do is just send out the artwork and get it done. But Melco on there, I think it's on Shop Melco Fonts or something like that. They released them maybe a year ago now. Oh, look at that. It's right there. Additional fonts. All right, so here's all the different fonts, and they do have the puff fonts down here, script and block. And they have presets, and there's some instructions on how to install them and use them. But they're pretty cool. I think you can get them on Shop Melco or Contact Sales. All right, I did a brand. Let's see, I did a brand, a 1.5 circle. I thought I had it saved with rope pattern, but it's not. How do I get it to look like a rope again? So rope, I assume you did some sort of decorative stitch. So if you did a decorative stitch, rope, you would just, you know, create it using whatever decorative you created to make that rope. This is one I made. It's not one that's pre-installed on the software. Okay, so when you're doing a rope type stitch, each element is digitized separately. All right. What other questions? All right. Anything else? Trying to think of anything random I can talk about before my kids come charging in here like fools. All right. I don't see any others typed in. Rachel, I'll show you since I still have it up. So, oh, I merged it all. So let me turn it off. So if I've got a design that has multiple colors, you can of course merge it by tossing this up. But what you were asking is how to auto merge. Right here, this button is auto merge color blocks, and that will automatically combine anything that's the same color stacked on top of each other. Okay. All right, guys, I'll chill for a second more if you have any other questions. Other than that, I guess I'll call it a day if we have nothing else. Remember to send in your questions, applications@melco.com, or you can type them in on these videos. I'll review this this video before next week, so if anyone has any questions that were missed, I'll add them on to next week. But, you know, oh, here we go. With purchase fonts, how do you remove bulk from them when they overlap? Let's see. It really depends on them. You can use, well, you can try, that's a little bit complicated, removing the overlaps on there, because depending on how they digitized them, they're expanded files. So you can either go delete the stitches underneath it. You run risk there of creating long stitches. Let's see, when you merge like that, do they all stitch green, then brown? Yes, so this one's going to stitch green, then white, then brown, then black. So what I meant by that, oh, there's more questions typed in. Let me see. Any tips on keeping lettering from closing or looking jagged? No specifics on lettering type or what's being sewn. Different letter, the jagged that you're talking about is a few different things can cause that. When you have gaps between the lettering, having a fresh needle is always a good idea, because if you have a burr on there, it causes it to kind of look more jagged. So that's one, just practical application. But another is look at your density. So yes, let's see. So if I have a letter, the density on that is how close these stitches are to one another, right? So if you're sewing out a letter or something and you're going, man, I see too much fabric between here, I'm not seeing enough, you know, it's just too open and jagged looking. What you can do is a few things. One, adjust your density. So maybe your density is set too high, and that's under your top stitching. So you can either try the auto density or, you know, mess with this. Thread, regular 40 weight thread is what, about 3.7, 3.8 points around there, I believe. So you can reduce it down to make the threads closer together. That's one. Another is to look at your underlay. So one easy way to clean up the edges of elements is to have a nice edge walk underlay. Your edge walk, the border margin, I wouldn't suggest going any closer than 7. When you start going 5, 4, 3, anything smaller, it gets closer and closer to the edge, what's your risk then? Your underlay is going to be hanging out over here and not covered. Okay, so the two things I would suggest is actually 3. Making sure your underlay is appropriate for the material and the size of the letter you're sewing. Check your density, make sure you have needle and a decent needle in your machine. Also, use a topper. So using a topper helps the stitches stay on top of your fabric and not sink down, so that can also help clean up your edges. All right, back to how do I remove bulk of purchased fonts. So let me see if I can put one in here. Let's see. I have some, I promise. I just gotta find them. All right, things I've bought. Where are they? Things I've bought, fonts. Whatever, it's a bought font. Oh, of course I inserted it here. So you can go and remove things behind it. So let's say I had this, not that I would want to do this, but I can go remove stitches in there. You gotta be careful when doing that though, because it's going to create possible long stitches in there, or mess up other things. But how you would do that is here, go to expanded mode editing, and now I can see all the needle penetrations and I can delete those, add trims and whatnot. You can, I'm not sure, I've not actually ever tried it. Let's see if I select that and then this. No, it won't do it because it's not wireframe based. So I was going to see if you can actually subtract elements like you can within DesignShop. So what I meant by that is if I have multiple things that are OFM based, you can use combine or subtract elements. So if I draw a shape, let's give it a stitch direction so it's actually stitches. There. So now if I take my S, which is a DesignShop thing, let's put it on top. And I say, all right, I want to take that triangle, subtract where the S overlaps. Right there is subtract elements. Now, if I move my S, you'll see it subtracted the overlap. See that? So now I have a gap in there. All right, any other questions, everyone? I don't see any. All right, everyone stay safe. Wash hands frequently. Have fun sewing. If you haven't done your maintenance on your machines, you should do that. Machines are happier that way. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you next Friday, and see how everything goes. All right. Again, it's Samantha with Melco's application team. See you later.